On this week's episode of the AP Euro DBQ race, 4 documents will argue the following prompt. Evaluate whether European imperialism in the late 19th century was motivated primarily by economic or by nationalistic factors. I'm your host, Gracelyn, and I will be your judge for tonight. Welcome to the main stage of the AP Euro DBQ race. Now, let's get into some context before we get into these beautiful documents. Prior to the surge of European imperialism in the late 19th century, Europe was in the rise of the Industrial Revolution. With new inventions like the steam engine and the popularization of trains, countries like France, Britain, and German states were able to gain power. With the rise of new inventions, there was also a growing need for raw materials like coal and iron. This would influence these European powers to seek other nations for these raw resources. Trade post settlements were common in places like Africa and Asia. Later, these trading posts and new social ideas that trended from original colonialism would influence stronger forms of imperialism. Now, let's get a look at our thesis. There were nationalistic causes that influenced and motivated European imperialism in the late 19th century. One cause was the rise of tensions between nations and rivalry of European powers. Another cause for imperialism was the belief that it was a God-given right for expansion, and having the most land would mean having the most power. However, the most important cause was the rise of new ideologies that convinced Europeans that imperialism was morally okay. Now, bring back my documents. Start your steam engines and may the best document win.
Most Europeans excused imperialism because they believed they were taking the correct course of action. In Document 3, Beaulieu states that the people living in smaller and less developed lands were in need, and only a power of a stable nation like France could care for them, therefore highlighting how the ideas of social Darwinism and the white man's burden were seeping into the minds of Europeans and convincing Europeans their nation was more superior and more capable to obtain the lands of smaller nations. The purpose of the document is to convince the reader that imperialism is necessary for powerful countries, and they cannot survive without a sophisticated European power, therefore showing how Europeans slipped into a mindset of superiority and wanted to obtain more land.
Document 5, what do you do successfully? Quickly.
In Document 5, the image shows Cecil Rhodes standing over the continent of Africa in a possessive manner, therefore highlighting how the scramble for Africa played a role in European imperialism and how many like Rhodes wished to own parts of Africa. The historical situation of the document is how European powers were attempting to industrialize Africa while taking over parts of their land. Industrialization was a European excuse for imperialism, therefore showing the effects of the Berlin Conference and how Europe would continue to hold many parts of Africa.
In Document 2, the Society for German Colonization explains how Germans need to rise up in order to keep up with other competitors. Therefore, showing how Germany viewed imperialism and how Germany plus the help of Austria-Hungary would grow to be stronger and be able to compete with France. The historical situation is following the Franco-German War of 1870 that increased tensions and grew German nationalism and caused Germans to want to grow and imperialize more. Therefore, showing how Germans were taking a part in imperialism in order to compete with stronger nations.
Document 2, your tone seems very pointed.
In Document 6, Kaiser Wilhelm II speaks about growing and obtaining enough land so the sun would never set with the amount of territory they owned. Therefore, proving that owning more land was a big part of imperialism and was a bragging right, especially if there were successful trade ports that gained a country more money. The purpose of the document was to convince Germany that imperialism was the future of the German state, and without it, they wouldn't be as powerful. Therefore, showing how the policy of Weltpolitik was adopted into Europe and how it affected imperialism through nationalistic factors.
Documents 3, 2, and 6. Your performances were good tonight. However, I believe a piece of outside evidence could have really upped your performance. I'm sorry, my dears, but you 3 are up for elimination tonight. Unless you 3 have a piece of outside evidence, I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you 3 to sashay away.
The evidence beyond the document would be the Sepoy Rebellion, when Indians rebelled against British forces, therefore showing how British and nationalism would grow and continue to take over and imperialize more countries and shut down anyone who rebelled.
Documents, wait. I'm not ready for you to go yet. I never do this, but for the first time in APO DBQ race history, I announce you all winners. Prance my DBQ! Tune in next week to keep up with all the latest drama.